I am so thrilled to be back on the show with you guys right now because today's special guest is exactly that, incredibly special to me and in my life. I've mentioned before that in the summer of 23, I organized a charity event that allowed me to make connections with a number of people that were connected to the film either directly or indirectly. And I got to meet some incredibly awesome human beings that I knew immediately when I met them, and as I built up friendships, I knew I needed to bring them on the show once the show got off the ground. And this particular guest, I have been chomping at the bit to get on the show because I believe that he has such incredible insights into the world of entertainment, including Krull, that I absolutely had to share with you folks. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Steven Bayman. Round of applause. How's it going, my friend?
Hello, how are you doing, Krebs?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic, and thanks for taking time to hang out with me today.
It's okay.
Now, for the folks at home who obviously are not yet familiar with who you are, can you please explain sort of how you and I met and what your relationship is to Krull and the entertainment industry?
Okay, so I'm friends with Lysette Anthony, and I help her with appearances at fan conventions. And I look after her Lysette Anthony official Instagram page. So you yourself follow it when you see the posts going out about upcoming appearances and so on. That's me behind her, as it were. So that's kind of how our paths crossed. You contacted me to talk about Krull, and by and large, it's gone from there.
Absolutely. I wholly admit that I met Graham McGrath first and kind of poked at him a little bit and just started asking questions like, hey, is there any way I can get a hold of so-and-so or anything like that? And he was extremely kind, and he reached out to me and he was like, hey, I have met this gentleman, Steven Bayman, that I think you absolutely need to talk to. And then he shot me your email address, and I reached out to you. And what I remember about that was I remember shipping the message off or trying to find you. I think I may have found you on IG first,
Yeah.
and I shipped you a message. And at first it was very like, at first the air was a little quiet. And then there was a response of just like, it's nice to meet you. And then, and then it was just like calm waters after that. And I remember thinking, oh man,
We're not gushing in our introductions. It's hello, how did you? Nice to meet you.
that's true. That is true. It's
Yeah.
probably very much a cultural difference. But because of that, I did find myself being very self-conscious for a minute where I'm like, oh my gosh, he's not going to talk to me, is he? He's not gonna be interested in conversation. And I
Who is this
really,
guy? Who is this weirdo? No. No.
it's just like, oh, it's another fan, one of those Krull people again.
Yeah.
It's like that. But then in very short order, we did start chatting. We became fast friends. And initially over our love of Krull, but not just Krull, because I've come to understand that you have an appreciation, even a passion for cinema that is ever increasingly classic, which I hate to admit that movies like Jaws or well, you have such a myriad collection of excellent films. What are some of your absolute top 10 film experiences that you still love to this very day?
Okay, so the ones I probably watched the most, I have to say, and I'm probably in the minority when I say this, but I prefer Jaws 2 to Jaws, but there we go. Poltergeist is up there. I don't know if you can see right above me, but I have the posters. I'll just tilt the camera so you can see that I've got original Superman posters right up there.
Oh yeah.
So there we go. So Superman 2, greatest superhero movie ever made, and Dark Knight can take a run. That's kind of I can do old school sort of, Death on the Nile or the Pink Panther. Then this week, Mission Impossible. Tonight,
Mm-hmm.
Jurassic Park. I really have such a range of what captures my imagination. And then, of course, there has to be things like Dragon Slayer and Krull and films of that sort of genre, as it were. But Ghostbusters as well, probably.
Absolutely. Excellent taste in cinema. I absolutely applaud you.
Oh, and
And
James
for
Bond.
those,
I should say James Bond. I'm sorry, I'm British. James Bond.
well, we have to. If we're going to talk about Pinewood Studios, we got to talk about James Bond.
Okay.
And for those at home who are listening to this purely in audio form, one thing I would like to point out, because of course this is my flavor of nerd, Steven is backed by all three major cinematic posters between the US and the UK. On his right hand side is the UK full size, what we would call a one sheet, but there's a different term for it in the UK, isn't there?
This is the UK quad. Then
UK quad.
this is a US one sheet, and then this is a US one sheet advanced or teaser.
And the US advanced teaser is one that we have talked about on the show before. This is the film, I'm sorry, this is the poster with the red planet with the two suns, and Grant McGrath explained this a bit to me too as well, and you just hit on it, which is that this is the poster that was released ahead
Mhm.
of the trailer, the film. It was like the initial foray into introducing Krull to the audience.
It's that sort of again teaser, just to go look what's coming, and then this is what it is, and then this was our version. So
And I am envious. I do not yet have a UK quad, but it's on my list.
I think Graham
I'm going
has
to
this as
absolutely
well.
find one.
I think Graham has this as well. He's told me he has a poster propped up against a wall or a door or something in his house. But he's told me about mentioning it to his son that he's on the poster. So as Titch is there, I would imagine this is the poster Graham was referring to.
It has to be. And I do know that on his desk, he also has like a mini version of that same poster, because he showed it to me in one of our interviews once upon a time. But that was actually, interestingly, and I don't think I ever expressed this to him, but when he showed me that little mini poster, he quite graciously said to me, "Oh, you know what this is." It was the first time I'd ever seen the UK quad. I had never seen that print
You've not
before.
seen this.
So it was, yeah, I
Well,
had
let me
never
move
seen
out
that
of the
one
way so
before.
you can have a proper gaze at it. So, okay, I'll just turn that slightly. So it goes, so you've got the Beast and the Slayers. Lyssa being abducted. You've got the Widow of the Web, Rel, Colwyn, Titch with the tiger, Emerald Seer. Yeah, I don't see Liam Neeson on the poster though. I don't see Robbie Coltrane on the poster.
The two missed opportunities. Is that in the upper left corner? Is that Ynir next to the Slayers?
Here, I can't quite
Yes.
identify who that's supposed to be actually. If I I don't even think it's Menno. So I don't really recognize who it is. It's just kind of like someone almost with a spear. But I'm like, I don't really recognize the artistry.
Oh
Well,
man, I'm sitting here like running through the names in my head of the actual actors. And I'm trying to remember the name of the head stunt coordinator, who I believe mostly play. I think he also played Nanog, but he helped with like the writing. When we first meet the bandits, he steals the pack mule and whips at Colwyn. But
oh,
now I can't think of his name. My apologies. I should know. I should know. It's my responsibility. But
perhaps go on
that's okay.
IMDb.
All right. So you mentioned earlier that you're obviously connected with Lysette, and you've helped her with both social media and with going to events to meet fans.
Hmm.
Might you be willing to tell us how you two even came to meet?
So at the time, it was just after we had lockdown in our country. So we're going about 3-4 years ago, and I worked in hotels at the time, and I looked after the hotel reservations, and I happened to see this name, Lysette Anthony, on our room list, and I'm like, that's a bit of a distinctive name. I wonder. She happened to call down to the reception, and I was like, nobody answer the phone. I've got this. So answer the phone, And clearly it wasn't Princess Lissa's voice at the other end of the phone, but it was a voice I certainly recognized from other projects. And it's like, I know who you are. So she made a beeline to come and meet me in the foyer. And so suddenly there she was, Princess Lissa at the top of the stairs. And I'm just like, oh, okay, this is fun. She came over and had a chat with me. And then I had to broach the subject of, well, you are part of a film that's really special to me. And her initial reaction was, oh, don't say the K word. And I'm like, I'm trying to be respectful, but yes, it would be. And she's like, that film. And I'm like, well, it doesn't matter how much or how little money it made. It's what it means to the audience. And the fact that people want to talk to you about it, that's something you should sort of hold on to. And she's like, interesting. I've not thought of it in that way. And then you do the whole thing. Well, if you're in town again, here's my number. Give me a call. We'll go for lunch. And she phoned me the next week. So, yeah. So all of a sudden it's like, hello. Oh, this is really unexpected. And we met for lunch and then said that she was looking for someone to sort of help with certain tasks and like the social media aspect and conventions, because she was getting more invitations for signing. And that's where I came into it.
That is
And
amazing.
I cover all this.
And what really impresses me about that is quite honestly your bravery in the moment. I know that for the average person, that when you're confronted with celebrity or even someone that you greatly admire, it can be very hard to just make that first initial statement of just, this is who you are to me. This is something you have done that matters to me personally. And I just want to, bring that out into the light and say thank you and encourage you to appreciate this, whatever the case may be. Sometimes just getting that far, and especially in a hospitality situation, it's very easy to fall back on your role of just like, oh, let me perform some customer service and have a great day. And then that's the end of it, right? But in truth, that moment of bravery kind of makes you a little bit of a hero in my eyes, because you have brought her kind of into the Krull fandom fold in a way that I don't think anybody else could have.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in an acting town, Stratford upon Avon. Yes, if I hear Shakespeare one more time, but that's the environment that I grew up in. I did theatre myself, so therefore I am used to seeing people on the street like Judi Dench or Ian McKellen walking along the high street. It's just, they're people. Before I went into hotels, I worked on the airlines. So I was going to LA all the time. It sounds really glamorous and so on, ignoring the fact that it's a 16-hour duty day. But I would get onto the Hollywood route simply so I could actually meet the actors that I always wanted to, because being a film buff. So I would have to be communicative, and suddenly, there would be nothing to sing. There's Meryl Streep suddenly in front of me. There's Carrie Fisher in front of me. There's Colin Farrell in front of me. And that's all name dropping, but they are experiences that I've had. So it wasn't out of my realm of comfort to have recognized that particular name on the rooming list, have that conversation. It wasn't uncomfortable to me. I can understand why people sort of get a bit giddy and over enthusiastic, but it's just, I kind of downplay it just to go, well, I'm appreciative of your work. But then Lysette and I went to a show in Sheffield a couple of weeks ago for her to do signing, but there were two Bond girls at the event. And so that's when my serene calmness went out the window, and it's like, can I talk to you about The Spy Who Loved Me? Can I talk to you about Thunderball? And it's the ladies in question were Caroline Munro, the helicopter assassin from Spy, and Martine Beswick, who was one of the gypsy fighting girls in From Russia with Love, and Bond's assistant in Thunderball. So my dignity completely went by the by, and it's like gushing in my praise. So it's, it does happen, but it's when those people are receptive to what you're trying to say, that's when it's rewarding for you. And that's what it was rewarding for me. I wanted to basically say, the affection I had for this film. I wanted to say thank you for being part of it, and it was accepted in the way it was intended, and a friendship blossomed.
That is something very magical about Lysette, because I think in part, in no small part, I think thanks to you, she agreed to do an appearance in Burbank
Yes.
last year, about this time last year.
Yeah. The
And
Hollywood show. It was, yeah, it was an occasion to get her and Ken reunited after 40 years, because they hadn't seen each other since the film. And it was a case of getting Lysette from A to B, because she's now returned to the UK. It's not a case of just popping down the road as it was in the days of Hollywood. So trying to get her out there and attend that show, it was a wonderful thing for me to see the pictures and the sheer pleasure that they had in reuniting, because they have now kept in touch since that show, which is brilliant from a fan perspective.
that is wonderful. I didn't know that last bit.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wait one. There we go.
There we go. Yes.
I the trip wasn't as great for me, because I'm just here in the States in Utah, but I made the journey down to Burbank specifically to attend that event just for Ken Marshall and Lysette Anthony. And meeting Ken was super, it was an enjoyable experience. I really liked getting a chance to speak with him a little bit. I will be 1,000,000% honest. There was something magical in meeting Lysette. And she is this seemingly infinitely gracious human being. She's so kind and so considerate. And here I am, just some plebeian, fan who saw the movie when he was 4.5 years old. I was a wee babe, and then now I'm in my 40s, and I ought to know better than to take a trip to meet two people.
Yeah.
But it was just this incredibly magical moment. She's such a generous and gracious human being.
Yeah, I can't now look at the film in the same way. It's broken that fourth wall for me. So therefore, when I'm watching it, it's instantly I'm going, well, that's not her voice, but I'll get past it. Or knowing full well that that particular day was a reshoot, and that was a wig, and that wasn't her hair, or that she'd spent hours in hair and makeup that day. And she herself even says on the commentary, you can actually have a running hair watch, because you can basically see if it's fluffy or non-fluffy. And it's yeah. So I now can't watch it just as a big fantasy story in front of me. I'm lucky enough to now, I had to sit here and count actually how many of the cast I've actually crossed paths with, and just suddenly go, oh, 5. That's quite okay. So it definitely has taken that from just being a film to something that's much more accessible to me personally, albeit a very tenuous link. But it's well, that's my friend, and thanks to you, I got to spend time with Graham and Belinda Mayne at a London signing last year, and then we're all going to get together in November, because we're trying to put on a screening with a bit of a Q&A, which I'm not going to steal your thunder. You can talk about. And yeah.
It's not my thunder at all. In fact, actually, I was going to happily segue into that next bit, which is very soon you and I will get an opportunity to meet face to face in the real, because
no.
Wow. No. I know, watch out. I'm a hugger.
The beast is coming.
Because you have done the champion's work of calling attention back to this film, which I absolutely loud and proud stand on a soapbox and shout out, we have underappreciated this film for too long. You have made it possible for this film to go back up on the big screen in your neck of the woods for a special event. So please tell us about this special event that you've been organizing and who's going to be there.
Okay, so Lizette and I talked sort of last year. We're going, well, we have to do something to mark the 40th anniversary, because what had happened the year before, we'd gone to a convention in London, and this is where I'll send you a picture of the two of us. It was, she'd been to one before but hadn't really embraced it or immersed herself in it. This was the first time when I said, you need to open your eyes and experience what's coming at you, because we sat at the table and the queue was a mile long, and it was a bit, whoa, being that side of the table. And then people coming up with their Krull comics and their Krull photos, or the soundtrack, or the DVD, or the Laserdisc, or their own posters. And she was just like, I had no idea. This is really quite shocking. And we carried on through the day. And then people were bringing up their young daughters, who said, we named our daughter Lissa after your character. And she burst into tears. She had no knowledge. It was completely off our radar what this film meant to people. So, cut to the next year, we said, well, we should do something because it's the 40th anniversary. What should we do? So, we thought about doing a screening, whether we hired out, we call them a cinema. You say theatre, right? Okay. So, we thought we'd hire out a theatre to do a screening, but then we got invited to a signing in London a year ago, which is where Graham came along with Belinda. And so the three of them hadn't seen each other since the film. So it was nice, hug, catch up. And I sent you a photo of the three of them together. If you don't have it to hand, I can email it to you.
Well, with your permission, can I show it on camera?
Go ahead. I sent you the picture. It's
this one. There we are.
So the three of
There it is.
There we go. There, lovely. It was such a nice day. So we spent some time together and thought, let's do a screening. So I hunted around for some organisations that showed an interest, and there was always that, oh, that sounds really interesting, and then they never come back to you. But I'd had Misty Moon Events, came strongly recommended from another acting friend of mine who is involved in some films that's had screenings there. So I reached out, and I'll give Stuart a shout out there. And he expressed interest, but he confessed at the time he hadn't seen the film. I don't know if he's watched it yet, but I've told him that he needs to. But he was interested in putting this together. So really, he's the organizer, not me. I just was the genesis of it. Quote Star Trek 2. There we go. And yeah, another film that's on the radar. There we go. And yeah, we're putting that together for November 16th. So we have extended invitations to various people. Some have said yes, which already announced is Belinda, Graham, and Lysette. We have extended invitations to other cast members. Some have not yet responded, but we're hopeful.
That is phenomenal. And I know that you and I both know you've mentioned Belinda a few times, and that name is familiar to us. But just in case we have listeners who are not familiar with Belinda, could you explain who she is to the film?
So Belinda played the I'm going to say the word changeling for want of a better word. Played the changeling Vela, who you must eat something, and then goes to try and rip out Colwyn's throat with the solid black contact lenses. These talons were
That's like the average.
yeah.
It's like the average American romantic relationship, anyway. But yeah, I remember, for whatever it's worth, and I am trying very hard to speak with Ms. Mayne about being on the show as well. But I reached out to her and I mentioned to her that, you know, she obviously had a very conservative amount of time on screen. The nature of her character was just that
Mm-hmm.
she didn't get a lot of camera time. But even in that short period of time, I thought she did an incredible job with characterization, with screen presence, and her impact on the story was vital. So I don't know if you've had an opportunity to really. You mentioned that you saw her at the
Yeah.
signings.
So I spoke to her. We had a chat on the phone because we were talking about the event. So I spoke to her maybe 4 weeks ago, and she sort of let it be known she actually did like 10 days work on the film.
Holy smokes!
Yeah. So there was obviously on the stage, the Woodland stage. So she did all that. And then there was the, I suppose, the equivalent of blue screen then. We have green now, but blue screen then, which is the scene where Lissa and Colwyn, and then they're kind of, oh, sorry, Lissa and the Beast, Colwyn, and then in the
Hmm.
middle. But all that was done. So she did do quite a chunk of work on the film. But in the final edit, much of that was disposed of. I guess the it is you who are betrayed, love is eternal and all that kind of stuff. That scene kind of had to take over the main thrust of the story. So anything that Vela and Colwyn were whispering to each other in the woods was seen, I guess, redundant. But she was very she was very enthusiastic about coming to this event. She says she has very fond memories of the film, and it was fun, and it was, nice bunch of people doing something pretty special. But that's obviously a conversation she had with me. But she would know better.
Well, and you mentioned this earlier. You have actually had contact with a number of people from the film now, far more than I have at this point, and I hope to remedy that. But who are some of the people that you've met from the film, and what was that moment like?
Okay, so the very first person was Liam Neeson. I happened to be living in Dubai at the time, and Taken 3 was doing its world tour, and you could pay 500 dirhams, which is £100, $150, something like that, to walk the red carpet, do the meet and greet. He'd come and introduce the film. You'd watch Taken 3. Didn't give a hoot about the film. I'm sorry. And I walked the red carpet. Great, fine, thank you, fantastic. And I went with my friends, and he's coming along and he's scribbling on everyone's Star Wars posters and Batman Begins posters and, you know, whatever. And then I'm stood there with my Krull DVD. And I took it's like an insert card out of the DVD. I'll just try and find it in my box of bits that I've got here, because I'm telling the story. So here it is. So it's the inlay card for the DVD. Okay. So I put this in front of him. He signs. He holds it in his hand. He sees Lysette on the side of the picture, and he's looking at that. And then he goes, Krull, what the hell? And so I shrugged and I said, well, it's one of my favourites. And he looked at me and he went, you're too young. And I said, well, we could talk about that, or we could talk about Suspect. And he said, well, I didn't have anything to say in Suspect. So, Krull, okay, really? And yeah, that was my first sort of, okay, I'm on a mission now kind of thing. So yeah, he signed my inlay card in Dubai. Again, I can send you a picture of the occasion, but it was just the fact that he went, Krull, what the hell? Just, yeah.
That's that might be one of the best quotes. You know how sometimes when they do anniversary editions, they'll put like quotes of reviews and stuff. I think they absolutely should put that quote from Liam Neeson on the box.
I know, but at least it was a talking point, and I actually had a conversation with him. Whereas other people, he just scribbled, moved on, scribbled, move on. He actually stopped and spoke to me, so that was fine and fun. And then, as you yourself know, I went up to a local theatre, Playhouse Theatre, to where I am now, and stood outside waiting for Todd Carty, who was Oswin. Now, where have I seen that before?
Oh, no
You
one
can tell the
knows.
story.
No, no, no. You were there.
Okay.
We'll talk about the picture later, but you were there. Please go on.
Okay, so Todd, Mr. Carty, I'm not on first name basis with him, was doing a tour of The Mousetrap, which is a very famous play by the late, great Agatha Christie. But if you see it, you can't talk about it. That's the rule of Mousetrap. Fight Club stole from The Mousetrap. That's all I can say. So I went up, waited by the stage door, and clearly he had the last call because everybody else was going in. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I've been stood here in the freezing cold for an hour. Where is this guy? And then suddenly there he was right in front of me. And he made a beeline to come over. And again, I did the introduction by saying, hi, I'm Steven. I'm a genuine fan of the film. Would you be willing to sign something for me? And the fact that I was putting two photographs, one for you, one for me, and then my giant, it's called a panel poster, which we can't display on this, but it's that one, but it's
Mm.
like man size. So it's the size of an actual door. I said, I'm not an autograph tout. And he laughed and said, that's fine. So he signed. And then he said to me, who did I play again? And I said, it was Oswin. And he said, yeah. And then he was asking me, well, what is it with this film? And I said, well, it's the fact that you actually care about the characters. It's not very sort of one dimensional. You're actually going on this journey with them. And obviously, it's been done at a much higher level with Lord of the Rings, because that's an even longer quest. But I said how you're actually rooting for these characters as you're going along. And it's not just, oh, someone's died, next. You're actually kind of, you feel it a bit. And he was sort of nodding and taking that on board. And then when I said, well, it's the 40th anniversary, and he looked at me in horror and was like, it can't be. It is. So he sort of pondered for a moment and went, yeah, we shot at 82. God, 40 years? And then he was like, really great to meet you. And he went on into the theatre. And then I went and watched the show that night. So I genuinely went to see the play. I didn't just, hang around for an autograph. But then he's just done a signing a couple of weeks ago in London. And there were a lot of Krull pictures there. And people were saying to him about this screening that we're trying to put together. And he had heard of it. So overtures have been made. Hopefully he'll see this and go, all right, count me in. Who knows? But the invitation has been made.
Would you like to tell us about when that's happening, where it's taking place, all that jazz?
So if they were to go to cinemamuseum.org.uk, then they can see upcoming events. And it's Saturday, 16th of November at 3 p.m. And we've got Graham McGrath, Lysette Anthony, Belinda, Mayne so far.
That is brilliant. I am extremely excited. I'm hoping that this event gets enough momentum that it picks up a few more of the Krull alum along the way. It would be, from a fan perspective, it would be quite genuinely a once in a lifetime opportunity. We're at a point now where, just by the nature of time, we are slowly but steadily beginning to lose our beloved cast, and I saw this as a once in a lifetime opportunity. You told me, you were very kind, and you reached out to me and you said, hey, we're doing this event. What do you think? And then we talked about that a little bit. And immediately when you and I were done, I turned to my wife and I said, so I think we're going to go to London this year. and, and, and we've never been, but it's one of those things that we've always wanted to do with our kids. And this was the perfect catalyst, the perfect impetus to make that happen. So that's me in a roundabout way saying thank you for all the things that you're doing to make this possible, because you are helping me build once in a lifetime memories, not just for myself selfishly, but for my family and my children. That's a huge thing. That's a big deal. So thank you for doing all that you're doing.
Well, you're very welcome. It's simply just, I wanted the film to be celebrated. It doesn't have to be a massive thing. It would be lovely if it did sort of grow and then other opportunities came from it. But it was simply just all you see on fan groups or internet sort of sites when people reference it and they go, oh, I'd love to see a screening. I'd love to do this. I'd love to do that. It should be re-released. It should be remade. It should have a sequel, all these things. And I figured somebody needs to pull their finger out and do something. So I reached out to some people, and Misty Moon has very generously said, we'll do it. But it's their baby. It's not mine. I simply just said, please do something, and I can bring these people, because I've been fortunate enough to have befriended at least 3 of the cast and scared one more person and then had an intelligent conversation with another. So it's I still laugh about Liam Neeson's reaction of all the things I could have done. But yeah. But yeah, he was very.
So
He took it in the spirit that was intended. I think I just surprised him. You know, I think it was something like his 3rd film. I think he did something, then Excalibur, then he did this, and so his career has far surpassed probably his own expectations. And so for someone to go back to this little film he did when he's worked on some of the biggest film franchises in history may have caught him off guard, but that was specifically why I chose it, because it was a film I liked, but I thought, no, this is something different to putting Phantom Menace under his nose for the 1,000th time. It worked. It worked.
I mean, I personally thought it was a brilliant choice.
I wonder
It's a
why you say
gold.
that.
Oh yeah. No, it's funny. There's this film called Krull, and no.
Yeah, I know.
So
You even sent me one of these. I feel like I'm part of an exclusive club. I had to put it on because I've seen other people in their interviews have worn this pin. Isn't it something like they're limited to a 100?
Yes. So again, folks at home who might not be able to see this, so Steven is wearing a really awesome Krull pendant, and it was made in 2 different sizes. And this is the larger of the 2 sizes, but I found this through a Krull fan group where one of the members, Peter Plant, who is also a resident of the UK, was making a whole line. It's sort of his, I don't know if maybe the proper term is side hustle. I'm not sure in this case, but he often will release pins that he has designed, enamel pins that he has designed for various nostalgic IPs. He's done RoboCop and Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and Never Ending Story, and I absolutely love his work. Well, the first thing I ever bought from him, unsurprisingly, was just a few of these large glaive pins. And while I've shared them, I bought some for my siblings because my siblings were part of my first time experience with the film. And I also got one for my mother because she was there when we saw it for the first time. And I had the opportunity to send one to you. I sent one to Graham. And because of the Burbank Hollywood show, I handed Lysette Anthony one. And so in a way, yes, when Peter Plant makes these pins, he only produces about 100 of them, and he keeps a few for himself. And so there aren't a ton of them out there, but the people who have them are the right people. Well, that's for sure.
That's great to hear. Thank you. I'm very privileged, and I'm very fond of mine. I don't wear it on a daily basis. I keep it tucked away safe. I'm a fan, but I don't take it to the extreme.
I saw on the Krull fan group, there's a guy who has, I think he uses a 3D printer for it, but he makes the medallion that King Turald wears to the wedding, and that has the Lord Marshal's key on the back, and he designed the 3D prints that you could take the key off.
Only the
It's
King
pretty
and
cool.
his Lord Marshal carry this key.
That's right.
I can't do an Alan Armstrong. I'm very sorry.
Oh, I would I always hesitate to try and impersonate his accent because I want to cause zero offense to that incredible actor.
He's
Alan
so good.
Armstrong is on my wish list of meet and greets.
He's so
Um,
good in anything he does, whether he's playing kind of hammy like The Mummy Returns, or you can go to deadly serious. That he was in Patriot Games in a small part with Harrison Ford, but just absolutely played that detective so dead straight and serious. He's a very talented guy, and it's often on our screens here in the UK on UK TV. For a long time, he was in a show called New Tricks. I want to say I didn't watch it, but I in my collection I've bought the box set, but it's just finding the time to sit down and work my way through it. So
my parents are huge fans of New Tricks.
okay, I think there's something like I want to say like 12 series or 14 series. It's a long. Although our shows don't go like 25 episodes per season, we do a series. So therefore we have like 6 to 10 episodes shows in a series. But the shows probably run like an hour at a time, so you're just going, but there's so much to watch. I can't devote all that
Right.
time at this time for this one show. Yeah.
And the good news is that it makes for an excellent, like the size of UK seasons compared to American seasons is an excellent source of revenue because my parents buy every season of everything they like. So yeah, they bought every single New Trick season. It also made gift giving very easy. Now you mentioned earlier that you've met about 5 of the cast, and so we know that you've met Lysette, we know that you've met Liam, we know that you've met Todd. Uh, who else have you met
There was
from
there
Krull?
was it was Liam first, then it was Lysette, then it was Graham, Belinda, Todd.
That makes sense. Yeah, Belinda and Todd. That's right. And if you could wave a magic wand and meet any of the cast today, who would you want to meet next?
Really good question. Living or dead?
Thank you so very much for listening to this episode of the Krulltimate Podcast. Now, I would like to hear from you. If you have any questions, curiosities, or comments that you would like to make about this or other episodes, you can send them to thekrulltimatefandom@gmail.com. Until next time, I have been your host, Professor Krebs, and this is the Krulltimate Podcast.